The death of the app icon. Apple just moved the goalposts on the $30 billion App Store tax by quietly deprecating the user interface in favor of the Intent API. The April 12th developer beta reveals an architecture where apps no longer exist as destinations but as background data feeds. When you ask for a ride or a meal, the operating system no longer launches an app, it executes a function. This is the first step in turning the entire iOS ecosystem into a headless service layer, where Apple controls the auction for every single user action. The P&L shift here is obvious. Apple is moving from a percentage of a sale to a fee for the intent itself. And the regulatory consequences are even larger. A pivot to regulatory arbitrage. The timing of this agentic framework is not about user convenience. It is a calculated response to the April 14th Department of Justice ruling against locked-in payment systems. By commoditizing the app interface through the Intent API, Apple creates a new gate that regulators are not yet equipped to handle. You cannot easily regulate the commission on an agentic outcome when the user never sees a checkout screen. The service's growth in the Q1 2026 report confirms the strategy. While hardware remains flat, the revenue from system-level integrations is up 19%. Apple is effectively building a new monopoly inside the shell of the old one, and they are doing it by making the apps themselves invisible. This ensures that the 30% margin remains intact, just hidden behind a different line item. The developer squeeze. For the developer, this is a forced transition to a commodity model. Under the new framework, the customer relationship is severed. There is no brand loyalty when Siri or the system agent chooses the cheapest or fastest provider based on a back-end auction. This turns high-margin software companies into low-margin utility vendors. Think of it like the transition from independent hotels to being just another listing on a travel aggregator. Except in this case, the aggregator also owns the phone in your pocket. This is why the major platforms are scrambling to update their hooks before the June developer conference. If you are not optimized for the Intent API by then, your app simply stops existing for the average user. The hidden infrastructure cost. Operating these agentic queries is not free, and Apple is offloading that OpEx onto the developers. Every call to the Intent API requires a specific compute handshake that developers must now pay for through the renewed service-level agreements. It is a brilliant double dip. Apple collects the fee for the user intent and then charges the developer for the compute required to fulfill it. This move effectively clears the App Store of smaller players who cannot afford the new participation costs, further consolidating power among the top 1% of earners who can survive on thinner margins. The real implication. This shift from an app store to an agent store is the most significant structural change to Apple's business model since the introduction of the iPhone. By moving the toll booth from the point of sale to the Intent API as seen in the latest developer builds, Apple is insulating its services revenue from the regulatory pressure hitting traditional app commissions. This strategy effectively turns the operating system into a private auction house, where Apple sets the rules and takes a cut of every decision. For investors, the takeaway is clear. The value is no longer in the apps themselves, but in the brokerage of the outcomes. Watch the adoption rates of the Intent API among the top 100 apps over the next quarter. If the big players like Uber and DoorDash fold and integrate fully, the transition to a total agentic monopoly is complete. The era of the independent app is over, replaced by a managed utility layer controlled entirely by Cupertino. Subscribe for more.